Good evening and welcome to our third webinar in our monthly webinar series for parents. My name is Kathy Thompson and I'm the founder of Beyond the Classroom. Since 1998, Beyond the Classroom has been a pioneer in the field of in-home tutoring, setting our standards high and helping students achieve great success with our certified teachers. We continue to set ourselves apart from other tutoring organizations because the student is at the center of our business model. We provide not only one-on-one academic support through tutoring, but we focus on the whole child and those aspects of their lives that affect learning. This is the reason we are hosting monthly webinars, along with offering support services at Beyond the Classroom, for examples, coaching for children with anxiety. There are times when learning is hard, and leaving this webinar, you'll have 7 ways to support your child when they struggle. Now I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce tonight's expert, Susan Shank. Susan is an entrepreneur, occupational therapist, speaker, author, and advocate for learning differences. In her book, Beyond OK, From Invisible to Invincible, she offers an insider's look at learning differences as a child, a parent, and a professional. After writing her book, she knew the next step was to write the how-to help guide and support moms as they empower their child to see their true learning abilities. She now has a group online program called the Invincible Mama Program, which supports moms in various countries. Susan also runs a business called Technology and Tools for Kids, where she works directly with a few VIP clients and trains occupational therapists across the globe in her iPads at School course. The course allows her to share her passion for technology and how technology helps kids develop skills. Susan applies her OT experience along with her understanding of the power of technology to show OTs a new way to integrate technology into every aspect of their support. I will now turn things over to Susan.
Hello, Kathy. I made it on. Hi, everyone. I'm Susan Shank, and it's wonderful to be here at Beyond the Classroom. And tonight, I'm going to be sharing some of the ways that you can support a child. They're a little bit different because they really are coming from the perspective of someone who understands what it's like to learn differently, and also as a mom and a professional. So I sort of blend all those things together when I'm talking about some of the points that I have tonight. So we're going to dive into the 7 ways to support your child when learning is hard. So what does that look like? Well, to begin with, you have to look at, what might you see when learning is difficult for your child? I mean, there's the obvious responses of struggling with their learning. But the first thing that might come up, and what I want parents to be aware of, is that they might see a change in their child's response to them or to school. So it's not always obvious because your child may not actually know what is happening in terms of their frustration. So it shows up in frustration because they want to be able to do things. They may understand something, but they can't quite grasp things the same way. So the way that they'll show you initially sort of how they're dealing with not being able to do what their peers might be doing is by showing you in their response to you, whether that's in their behavior, they're irritable, they're angry, or they might just melt down. You might see a lot of tears and crying. Another response might be that they actually withdraw. So they actually, don't talk to you as much. They sort of clam up. And as a result, they can also start to refuse school. So these are some responses that I would like parents to really notice. And it's actually something that even if a child is learning differently, they can act grades just by how they survive in school, but their response will always show you that there is something going on underneath. I only say that because I achieved high grades to very low grades. So I know that grades are not always the indication of struggling when it comes to learning. So obviously you might see struggles in your child in terms of what they're showing you. So when you're completing homework, um, you can see that they're not completing what is asked of them, and they're very frustrated. And um, just from experience, that you'll probably find that you become frustrated as well, because it's just a battle again of trying to figure out how you can help them with their learning. So you'll see that struggle at home when it comes to their learning or getting them to complete their homework. And obviously, another sort of clue that they're struggling with their learning is you start seeing that in the grades that they're bringing home, or the concerns that are being voiced by other people, such as their teachers. So at that point, you know that there can be some gaps in learning that are happening because it's becoming very noticeable. And those are sort of some of the signs that you'll start to notice, whether your child voices a concern or not. Those are the things that you'll be looking at. So that takes me into the next point, which is, what can I do now to support my child? And what I want you to consider when you're thinking about supporting your child is actually to listen to them. Um, because when your child is telling you that they're not smart enough, I know as a parent you want to jump in and you want to say, no, no, you're smart. You're 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 capable of doing this, and you know in your heart that they are. They are smart, but they need to voice those concerns to you. So it's a matter of stopping and listening to them, because they want to tell you their struggles, and it actually allows them to deal with the shame that they might be experiencing with their learning. And a book that I highly recommend for everyone is Daring Greatly by um, Brene Brown. And she talks about shame a lot. So actually, this is covered quite a bit in my Invincible Mama program, because it's an area that we really have to address, because if a child feels shameful, there's many other responses that'll come with that. And it actually interferes with the learning process, because your brain actually starts shutting down. So allowing your child to actually express themselves is one of the first steps in helping them deal with their shame. So that's why I put listen first, because it's really important for them to feel safe and be able to express what's going on. And I had a quote here in the book that I wanted to share with you, if I can find it quickly. Um, it says here, she writes, it's on page 60 if you actually or 61 if you have the book. So it says, if we don't come to terms with our shame, our struggles, we start believing that there's something wrong with us, that we're flawed, bad, not good enough, and even worse, we start acting on those beliefs. So that's just a little bit about what's in this book when it comes to dealing with shame that can come with learning. So that's why I said right now, the best tool you can do for your child is actually to listen to them and allow them to express themselves. Now, of course, you don't end there, but that's a very powerful part of letting them deal with what they might be dealing with in terms of their learning. The next step is to be real. And I just had to learn this in my own household. But that's being able to voice what you can do well in and what you can't do well in. And this, at first it feels like, why am I telling my child I can't do this very well? It feels awkward, particularly when I had to express, I can't write very well, or there's things that I couldn't do very well, but I could show them, I still had this ability, and it was an eye-opening for them to say, yes, you can do this, Mom. And then I would say, you know, well, you can do that as well. So we just went back and forth about what I could do well with and what I wasn't doing well in. And they were able to start accepting all parts of themselves. And they were able to say, well, I don't do well in this, but I'm really good at this. And it allows them to, again, express some of the weaknesses that they have, but in a safe environment. And it allows them to see that as people, we all have our strengths and our weaknesses. And we can actually tap into our strengths to help us with many things in life. And finally, what you can do now is really observe. And I think I'm really good at observing because of my training as a professional, because I'm an occupational therapist. We're trained to observe what is happening when it comes to skills. So I think I've just naturally added this in because this is how I respond to situations with my kids. I'm always observing. So you watch your child and you want to notice what do they find easy? What are their strengths? Because you might notice that they might know all the stats in a hockey game, and yet they can't recall um, 2 plus 2 in their head, and you wonder how can this be? But you have to start looking at what is giving them that information. How are they receiving that information? And I mean, interest obviously has a big role in whether they're learning something, but there's also the strengths. There's something in that that is allowing them to learn at a higher level. And then watching obviously what they are struggling with and where they need the support. So that's three sort of crucial things I think we need to look at when we're trying to support our kids that are learning differently. I like to call it learning difference. So why do we need to start listening and observing? As I mentioned, there's a lot of shame around learning differently. And shame is very powerful. In actual fact, it offers the same physiological response as being physically hit. And this again is in the Daring Greatly book, and it was eye-opening to me. So this is why you get your fight or flight response. This is why some kids will withdraw into the classroom and want to hide, which was my number one coping strategy, or they will come out swinging. And when shame actually causes this sort of response, then a part of the brain is actually hijacked in the sense that it can't rationally respond anymore, and that's why you'll get a number of behaviors that can surface um, that that don't really go along with what your child is naturally their natural tendency is because when shame does become the number one sort of response to something, you actually get different behaviors than what you normally would, and that's why the listening and observing is really important. Also, when I wrote my book, Beyond Okay, From Invisible to Invincible, these points really were highlighted as I walked through my own journey. I realized that there still is a lot of shame around learning differently because I'm not hearing a lot of adults talk about their learning or talking about how they learn differently, or that reading isn't something they do really well, or that writing isn't something they do well, or doing math in their head. So as I wrote through this book, my book, I realized that this was part of the shame that has continued is that adults actually aren't stepping up to say, this is how I learn. Um, and this is sort of how we need to change how we're approaching learning differences. Also, learning differences, I still feel, if you want to call that a learning disability or dyslexia, um, I still feel that it's very much misunderstood. And I feel, when you have those diagnoses that you're average to above average intelligence, and yet kids can't reach this potential with some of the methods that are put in front of them. So they're really their responses to survive and smoke screen many adults into um, having them believe that they do understand, and that's because they're very smart and they know exactly what needs to happen in order for them to get the grades that they need. And some of those coping strategies I review as well in my program, but some of those are basically copying off someone, using your peers. These are things you don't want to do, but they are survival strategies because sometimes the other methods aren't available. And when a child has a learning difference, they have to survive because sometimes there isn't a lot of other strategies, and if they don't have the ability to express the shame that they have about learning, then they will continue to stay in survival mode and smokescreen many adults into believing that they're able to get the grades. When in actual fact, if you were to, take them aside and ask them to do the same math question as they had proved they could do with their peers, you would see that they weren't able to complete that activity. And when you ask them how they actually got that answer, they'll probably tell you that they didn't get that answer, that someone else did. So this is all part of the struggle and the misunderstanding that happens with learning differences, and that's why you're left in that survival mode. And again, speaking from experience, I had a number of survival strategies myself, and I actually smoke screened myself. Even when I had the ability to get high grades, I really didn't feel that I was getting them, that it was out of sheer luck that I was getting those grades. So after you survive for so long, you actually don't realize when you're actually getting grades just for having the ability to do that. So let's look at 7 ways to support your child when learning's hard. I know I've really talked a lot about listening and being real, but it's a big part of what I want to bring to the world of learning differently. And observing is really important. And again, like I mentioned, this is part of my training and being able to observe children's strengths and weaknesses and getting a really clear idea on what it is that they can do well in, and then what are they struggling with, and how can we actually walk over some of those bridges instead of always working on the area of weakness. Because as you know, if we work on our strengths, we can make gains in those areas much quicker than if we focus on the areas of weakness. The gains that you're going to make are much slower. And I feel that sometimes that's where the learning gaps can increase, is when we stay too long in the area of weakness and not focusing a lot on the strengths. I realize you have to work on both, but you really have to tap into where a child is gaining in terms of their strengths. I guess I could give you an example. So let's say an obvious one would be decoding and reading, being able to sound out a word so that you can read a word. Um, if you can't sound out that word to read it, then you can't understand what's in front of you. And yet, if someone read that to you, you could understand it. So the strength is that you have the comprehension, you have the ability to understand the information, but the weakness is you don't have the decoding ability to achieve that. So to tap into a child's strength, use a method that allows them to comprehend at that higher level. And then still you can work on the decoding, but you want to make sure that it's weighed out, so that the child is being able to learn at the level that they understand. So that's a quick example of looking at their strengths and their weaknesses and trying to determine what's the best way to get this child where they actually should be, which is in your average to above average level of learning. So the third point is that you want to model what to do. And for parents, this is really allowing your child to watch as you show them how to complete an activity. Math is probably a great example of this. So when you're asking a child to do something in math, if they don't have an idea, then you can model for them what it is that you're asking them to do. And you get the child to observe and to participate, but maybe not even complete the activity. And what they're doing is they're having an opportunity to watch and to learn from you without that pressure. And this is a way for them to actually learn through your modeling. The next thing that you want to do is set priorities, because if, let's say, your child is having difficulties in a number of the academic areas like reading, writing, and possibly math, then you need to know what is the area that you need to focus on. To focus on everything may not give you gains that you want to see, because it's hard for us to improve in every area of our life. So if you can think of yourself as an adult, if you try to improve every area of your life, you probably get exhausted pretty fast. So you have to look at what is the best goal that you could focus on right now to give the best results that you need or your child needs at this moment. And generally, reading is a pretty high priority because reading is in every aspect of schoolwork. So in that case, generally reading is a pretty high priority for a child to be able to achieve. So that's some of the things that we look at, but also a higher priority to academics is a child's health, and that can be their physical or emotional health. So all those priorities will change, and particularly whatever position you're taking. But as a parent, you're going to have different priorities than other people that are involved with your child. So your priorities may be your child's emotional health, because if they aren't emotionally able to deal with school and the anxiety that might be around learning, then their ability to learn is going to not be at the highest level. So a higher priority is their anxiety level in order for them to learn. Um, so that's just something to consider when you're looking at supporting your child. So the fifth point is to support them and to offer them success. So this is a little bit different than modeling. So once they're able to see what it is they're to do, and you start understanding what they need for support, you try to give them the support and allow them to be successful with their learning. And I'll think of an example of this would be, um, let's say, math is always a good example, but if if your child was working on multiplication table, um, when they were working a higher level multiplication, but they couldn't recall 2 times 2, then you would give them the support of a times table chart or a calculator, because you know that they understand 2 times 2, but it allows them to have the support that they need to be successful with the higher math that they have to do. So that allows them to be successful. And I'm not saying that you wouldn't focus on 2 times 2, but if you're working on allowing them to be successful with their learning, then you want to look at, how can we make that happen? And again, it's really just looking at maintaining a child's self-confidence and esteem in their ability to learn. How can we do that? And then this sort of leads us into the next point, which is giving them the tools. How can we give them the tools that will allow them to be successful and independent? And this is my love of technology, and what I actually teach occupational therapists is looking at ways to gain independence using technology. And because the apps that are available, let's say for an iPad, will allow a child to touch the letter B and hear that it's a B without somebody telling them that that's what that letter is. And even if you told them that that was a B, they wouldn't view that as being independent. But having a device tell them allows them to hear and learn something as many times as they need to, and they view that as being independent, and it maintains their self-esteem. So those are some tools that you might consider when it comes to supporting your child. And finally, the last thing is to engage with your child, basically. I like to say to the moms I work with, you're not the teacher, so take that pressure off you and your child, because you want to find ways to engage them in learning that fits them and is fun for them. So um, basically, I can give you a great example with my youngest. It was really hard for her to have, you know, the beginning and the middle and the end of a story, and she really wasn't into writing yet. She couldn't um, actually create words and put them on the paper at that point. So we used the video to allow her to tell a story. And then from there, we worked on getting it eventually to paper. And that was a way to engage her in the process of writing without even writing. And it was basically getting her ideas down and getting them down so they would flow from beginning, middle to end. And it was a fun way, and we had fun. And that's what you want to do. You want to engage them as much as you can and take that pressure off you being the teacher. So those are some of my points just to help you to support your child that is having difficulties with learning. So I guess that brings us to the end. We have a few minutes left. Thanks for listening to me chat away. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box below, and I'll try to answer them the best that I can. I'm going to take a look and see if there's anything here. I saw that there's a few people chatting. I didn't want to get too distracted. So does anyone have any questions, or I can talk a bit more about my book? More about my book? Sure. Oh, you're so welcome, Cheryl. Um, More about my book. Well, my book basically, I started writing not necessarily to write a book. It was because I I needed to really go through the process of understanding my learning, and I had actually I was in sort of a state of denial when it came to my learning. I think I had shoved down all the feelings and everything that I had had with the experience of learning, that I had to actually start writing them to really relive them. And that allowed me to help my kids, because after I started seeing that they were struggling in different ways, I knew that I couldn't help them until I completely accepted every part of myself. And writing was the only way I could do that. So I just started writing about my experiences as a child. And then I wrote what it was like as a parent to try to walk through the process, which actually seemed to be a fairly lonely process of not knowing what to do, because I knew I wasn't taking a traditional approach to anything. I think it was because of my training and my experience in the school. I had a lot of training to be able to walk through what I wanted. So so yeah, it was basically about my experience as a parent, and then I started talking about how my training as an OT, I started to realize that I viewed things very differently because of my learning difference, and that's actually what created my business and has led to where I am right now, and how I tapped into my strengths to lead me to every aspect of my life. And so I felt that other kids and other people needed to tap into that. So that's my book. That's what it's about. You wrote a book as well, Renee? Very nice. Keep writing. I'm actually going into the schools next month to speak. They asked me to speak to a number of students that are learning differently, and to just give them my experiences, to give them hope and encouragement. Yeah. Thanks, Kathy. Oh, you're so welcome. I'm going to keep addressing the stigma when it comes to learning differences, because I was able to watch my three kids walk through this and have a lot of confidence in who they are and in their learning. Um, I have one in university now. I have one in grade 11, and they definitely know that they have the ability to learn. And yeah, so I'm still working through with my youngest. It's it's something that you're always working through. Oh, that's great. I hope it does take the pressure off parents, because I just want parents to be able to really connect with their children and allow them to have a safe place. Yes, keep writing your book, Renee, and reach out to me on my Beyond OK site and let me know about it. Yes, yes, I have the Invincible Mama program, and it's a do-it-yourself version. I have videos and audio that you can listen to. So if you're driving and you don't have time to watch the videos, and I have a workbook that you can go, and I made it just for the Beyond the Classroom for the parents that are listening. And I just want to get my message out to people so they can understand my approach when it comes to helping their children. And I hope it changes people's perspectives and gives them hope, and the end result is really to empower your child. That's what I want. I feel that kids are actually going to be the changing point when it comes to how we're learning. It's going to be coming from the inside out. Thank you, everyone. I'm glad you had a great time listening to my story and to my thoughts around supporting kids. Yes, share away. Yes, for sure, Sasha. Yeah. I could stay with you guys all night. Yes, definitely share. And like I said, I'm starting to speak in the schools, which I'm very excited about. So if that's something that your schools would like, then definitely reach out to me as well.
That's great. It's Kathy here. Thank you so much, Susan, for such an informative presentation. I love the way you broke everything out into 7 clear, concise steps for the people listening. And yeah, and just inspired, obviously, another writer in the crowd to continue on, which I think is fabulous. So thank you all for attending the webinar this evening. The replay will be available on the website within the next few days. And I just wanted to let you know our next monthly webinar is on May 9th. It is called From Unicorns to Ukuleles, Ways to Get Your Child the Sleep That They Need, which we know sleep is critically important to learning. So please do tune into that May 9th at 9 o'clock. So thank you again, Susan, and to everyone for attending this evening. And with that, I will say good night.